Welcome to the weekly recap. We have several topics, but they're all pretty much connected. So
seems like, yeah.
Yeah, so a little bit of follow-up from our last video and some changes in various points of the companies that we love to talk about. So,
yeah, and some of the stuff from the last video, some of the things that we've been hearing on Twitter and comments and stuff like that will be interwoven. So there might be little bits of it in each topic, and then at the end we'll address some of those things as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So, biggest news probably this week is the promotion of a new executive at Microsoft.
Yes, yeah. His name is Matt Booty, is that correct?
Matt Booty. I think he was maybe Sea of Thieves inspired, like they promoted him because it seemed like it made sense. I knew
you were going to go there.
It's impossible not to make that joke, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. It's an interesting move.
Are you saying that maybe that game coming out influenced this guy getting a promotion?
Yeah, his name goes with the game. Why not, right?
Yeah.
But here's what's really interesting, actually. Here's what I thought of when I saw that was the person they promoted. We talked a little while ago about Sony promoting John Cadera.
Yes, yeah.
Right? And when they promoted him, I said in a video that we did about that was really interesting because they promoted him right after a year at Sony where, for the first time ever, they saw that their online sales, their subscriptions, were bigger than, like, everything else.
Yes, yeah.
So they promoted him, and I thought it made a lot of sense because, you know, you promote the person who's driving the biggest corner of your revenue. So they promoted him up to run the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that kind of reminds me of this situation because this is the person who was over the Minecraft franchise.
Yeah, that's true.
And, you know, there's lots of little things that we're going to discuss that are interwoven in here, but we know that Microsoft is having an issue with games. We know that that's the feedback they're receiving.
Yes.
And that would be, if there was one place that they needed to improve, that's where they would need to improve, is in games. So you take the person who knows about the franchise that's literally done the best for Microsoft, and you put them over the games.
Arguably their biggest publishing success is Minecraft.
Their biggest game-based success. They take that person that runs that, and they put him in charge of all the games, which that reminds me of Cadera going to be in charge of PlayStation.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Very similar. What's also cool about that is we did predict that, and actually a lot of people disagreed with us, that Phil Spencer would be replaced.
Well, it's weird to say it that way, replaced. It makes it sound like you kind of got rid of him. But so you have to kind of preface what happened there. He got promoted.
Right. So Phil Spencer got promoted earlier this year. We talked about that in a video, and we kind of made some predictions as to what that means and where everything goes.
We stated that there are multiple possibilities. You might see a situation where he doesn't necessarily get someone taking his spot underneath on the ladder, but he's just doing more work. He's
resulting in a harder
he's doing exec stuff. He's doing what he used to do. But we said that most likely at some time in the future, I think I even said within 6 months, you'll see someone announced there. They might even create a new title. We've seen that happen in companies that we worked for. Yeah, essentially that's what they did. Some people have said that Shannon Loftless is like not in her position. That's not the case. She's
like head of publishing and he's head of games. There's a mild difference.
Yeah, there's a difference there.
But he is essentially the replacement of Phil Spencer's role.
Yeah.
But they're calling it something different. He's not head of Xbox. He's head of games, which may as well kind of be head of Xbox. But that allows Phil Spencer to spend more time in that executive role by having someone that can essentially coordinate all the different. Shannon Loftus is one of the people that reports to him, in addition to Bonnie Ross and all of the different studio heads and publishing heads. Yeah. So that's interesting because a lot of people did not think they would replace that position in any capacity.
Yeah, it is.
Some might not be thinking of this as being a replacement of that position, but that was very much...
Essentially, that's what this is, yeah.
Yeah, and even Phil Spencer in an interview kind of worded it that way.
Well, it's great because this really solidifies, along with the other two promotions, Kareem Chowdhury's promotion, Mikey Barr's promotion, and Phil Spencer, now you're adding this. That's you know, usually when a company does that, that's a big expense, so they have to really be seeing some nice profits somewhere in their business to justify doing this. Because that's a big salary. It's a lot of zeros you're adding to multiple people's paychecks.
Yeah, so you're paying out a lot more money on your staff when you're doing this.
Yeah.
To put somebody in the EVP role is a sign that they're going to give a big chunk of their attention and their mind share and their profit share to gaming. And then to add, and this is another CVP, just to be clear. So Matt Booty and Mikey Barra and Kareem Chowdhury are the 3 that have been promoted within the span of a year.
Within 12 months.
CVP, which that's, I would have to guess, a pretty big pay bump.
Huge promotions within 12 months. Like I said, that's a lot of zeros they're adding up there at Microsoft.
That is a lot of zeros. That's a big bump. So that shows, it shows 2 things, actually. It shows confidence in what they're doing overall. It shows confidence in gaming as a department for Microsoft.
Yeah.
And it also shows that they see that they have some things that they really need to work on to keep themselves where they are and to see growth, because they're also not just being complacent and sitting there doing exactly what they have been doing.
So
there is something needing to change.
You're saying it's a good thing, but you're also saying they're admitting that they had some fault in the way they were doing business over these last however many years, 15 years.
So it's essentially a sign, in my opinion, that they see they have some problems, but they're doing well enough financially that they can put people in positions to help with those problems. And it's interesting because PlayStation has been the biggest share of Sony for a long time.
For a good 7-8 years, yeah.
Yeah, so that's not a surprise. They wouldn't have a moment like Microsoft had earlier this year where they say, or last year now, where they say, oh, we're going to put somebody on the executive team that's from gaming, because they already had all that. That was already the way it was, because they've already known that. That was a surprise to Microsoft. Wow, gaming is actually taking over Windows was what made that decision happen. So it's kind of interesting that now we're seeing it from both companies.
Definitely,
now both companies are in that position. Here's the thing I want to see, though.
Yeah. What
does this guy do? Because I think anyone who is an Xbox fan somewhat kind of sees that over the last few years since Phil Spencer's arrival, and it's not just since then, there's been changes to what type of content we're getting.
Yeah.
And you have, the compliment that people have about Xbox's executive team is they're very involved with the community and they're gamers. So that's great. It's great that you have Phil Spencer and Mikey Barr and they're gamers and they understand gaming. At the same time, though, they have very different tastes than their consumers do.
They seem to, yeah.
They seem to.
I'd say Mikey Barr is kind of the closest to it, but then you still see him, like, I think recently, if you befriend him, you can kind of see what games people are playing.
Yeah.
I think he's playing Destiny 2. It's interesting that you're choosing to play Destiny 2 on console when, like, everybody there's been, like, a mass exodus of that game.
Exactly. So that's interesting. He also plays a ton on PC. Which is fine, because Microsoft is putting a focus on PC gaming.
You think it's fine. I have a problem with that.
Well, I don't think it's fine. Like, I do disagree with that direction. It's okay in the sense of at least he's not playing mobile games, which is not something they even do. But, many of us that are Xbox fans, most of us, I think, we don't like that direction. So it's interesting that he plays most on PC, which is the corner that most of us don't see. We don't agree with.
Yeah.
And then Phil Spencer has an interesting taste in games, aided by Shannon Loftus, who also has kind of a similar taste, and we saw that this last E3. All kinds of cel-shaded, indie, cartoony kind of games, in addition to some others.
They both seem to really like the family games.
Family-oriented.
Stuff that's okay for everybody, the E and the T rated games they seem to shy away from, just based off of things they've said on their own Twitters and their own gaming habits and things that they've promoted and
things
t-shirts.
They get most excited about, things they wear t-shirts of.
They've worn. They seem to really be into those types of games. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see those games selling a lot. I don't see those being... That doesn't seem to be what your fan base is into. Your fan base is into the mature rated, the shooters, especially shooters.
Halo.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah. I don't see a lot of talk about those things, even when those games come out. I don't see it.
The executives themselves don't tend to play, and Mikey Barra does play Forza, but they don't tend to play Gears. You don't see them on Gears or Halo. You see them more likely on an indie title or on something that's a little bit less popular. And that's okay, but I do think it's influenced what we get.
It does seem like, in particular, Phil Spencer, we talked about this when he got promoted in that video, it does seem like he does favor a lot of the family, the cartoony, the E for everyone. Look at the 42 games they sold, or they showed at E3.
Most of them were like that.
Yeah, there was a moment in E3 where if you don't pay attention perfectly, you're like, is this the same game?
You think you're watching the same trailer again and again, and all of the trailers that seem the same are not what we liked. I mean, most of E3, I was like, that's kind of cute, but where's the real games? You know?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's interesting because what we talked about last video was Sony actually announced numbers at CES.
Yes. Yeah.
They announced that they have 73.6 million consoles out there. They have 645 million games sold, digital and physical. And we kind of broke those numbers down to say basically each console throughout the generation, throughout its life, has had 2 games purchased for it.
We're talking about the PlayStation platform because we don't have numbers.
Because we don't have numbers for Xbox.
Microsoft and Switch technically just came out.
Right. So we don't have the numbers for the other 2, which is why we didn't discuss those numbers. Because we want to stay current and we want to stay relevant.
You did specifically say current many, many times, and it seems that some people struggle to understand what current is and what it means.
But here's the thing, is how is this affecting Microsoft's attach rate? What is Microsoft's attach rate? I don't think either of us said that we think it's a certain thing. I think it's...
No, the only thing I said, and I even stated this is just my opinion, is that I think people would be surprised.
At what the number
whichever direction you think it's going to go. Everyone has a perception of what they think is a high number, what they think is a low number, what they expect to hear when they hear numbers. And I think the vast majority of everyone would probably be pretty surprised, and it wouldn't be whatever they think it is, whether you think it's good or bad.
And I think Microsoft, they don't announce numbers for a lot of things, and I think we do have to speculate in a lot of areas, and we do our best to do our best speculation, but we really are speculating, and I think a lot of their numbers would be very surprising because we just really don't know what
the only number we know from the last year that's a hard number is they said that Xbox Live monthly active users was in the 52 to 55 million a month range, which is really...
And that was surprising.
Really good. I know a lot of people try to damage control and say that it's not good because of whatever reasons they think. No, having that many people coming back to your ecosystem on a video game, when you have all these other things that are taking your attention, that's really impressive.
That's really impressive. Yeah. So my question, and I don't have the answer to it, it's totally rhetorical at the moment, what is Microsoft's attach rate, and how has it looked over the last... 1 year, but then over the last 5 years. So since Phil Spencer came about, or right before or right after he came about, what is the attach rate, and how is this selection of games that's being favored by the executive team right now, how is that affecting our attach rate? Because ultimately, how you attach a game to a console, and most certainly how you attach 10 games to a console, is you put out the games the consumer wants.
Yes.
I really think all of the companies are having an issue with that right now. I think
definitely.
We've seen
Well, I don't think Nintendo is. I think they're selling pretty healthy.
Nintendo's kind of in their first year of their games, so they're doing well.
At their 4-year mark, that's what you want to measure.
That's when you see that. Yeah.
You want to compare apples to apples.
We've had Xbox and PlayStation around in the same capacity for a while, and we've seen a lot of evidence in a lot of places. Even people on the PlayStation side have noticed low sales on certain games.
Yeah, we've seen videos.
We've seen videos of people talking about the sales and people essentially saying, why are we not buying our own games, even on both sides, for their own fan base and for the opposite
for both
fan
of
base.
those.
And it's interesting because it seems like that we're not getting what we want. And that's got to be part of the attach rate thing.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think you're onto something with saying that people, for whichever platforms you're a fan of, if that attach rate is really as bad as it looks, if it really is 2 games a year for any of these, let's say it's across the board for both the Xbox platform and the PlayStation platform. If it really is only 2 games, that is bad. That is bad. That is not a great number. That's not something you want to boast. That's not something you want to hang your hat on, saying that that's a good thing or that's winning something.
And I feel like a lot of the comments that we got on our last video, but a lot of also not from that, just in general, everyone seems to want to make this good. We are promoting this. We're saying 2 games attached to each console is good because that's how it was with other consoles that we've seen before. The attach rate was similar, or, whatever reasons people have. And we should all want more for the industry. To me, when I hear 2 in a generation per console, I don't care who it is, and I don't care how comparable it is to anything else. You can't tell me that Sony and Microsoft are 2 games per console. Yes, that's exactly what we were going for. Yeah. No, of course they're not. That can't be what they want. I don't care which company it is.
That's the reason why none of the companies would actually come out and state that's our attach. That's the very reason.
That's why they give you their big number, and their big number.
They choose to give you the big number, and then you do the math.
And you do the math, and you realize, wow, that's not that great. And it doesn't mean our point in our last video wasn't, oh, Sony must be doing so much worse than Microsoft. Our point was, this is bad for the industry.
This is bad for the industry.
This is not...
Yeah, we're going to go more into that towards the end of the video, so I'll save most of it for that. But essentially, you've had a lot of studios close down in these last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
If some of these attach rates that people have done math on for some of these consoles are accurate, well, that's the reason why these studios are closing down. People are not supporting these games. And it might be sort of what you just said. It could be that Microsoft and Sony aren't giving us the games that we want. Maybe that is it.
There is something else to it, though. Because remember, so I'm going to use 2 games that I remember recently. Hellblade and Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah.
Which have vastly different sales from one another. But they were so talked about. You had Xbox podcasts promoting these, telling you to get a PlayStation to play these games.
I've made fun of all the Xbox guys.
They were selling us those games.
They were pushing these games.
Horizon Zero Dawn and Hellblade.
And we're not talking about like 5 minutes worth.
We're talking a whole half a podcast.
We're talking about over the last 12 months, hours and hours and hours of people pushing these little games.
And the sites were doing the same thing. They were pushing them and pushing them and pushing them. Yeah. And so Hellblade ended up... Where?
500,000 was the number last reported a couple months back.
And that was total, right? PC and PlayStation.
Yeah.
So that's about 0.5% per... If you just did that on just the PlayStations. So if you take the whole 500,000 that's split between PlayStation and PC, and you just say, all right, 73 million PlayStations.
Yeah.
That's a little over 0.5% attach rate.
Yeah, that is really bad.
And we're talking about a game that was talked about. It was, everyone made a huge deal of it. When people started playing it, they loved it. There were screenshots everywhere. My big question is, for the industry as a whole, how does a game that gets so much buzz not wind up at 10 million?
Yeah, how does it... Well, the number that would make more sense for 10 million is Horizon Zero Dawn. So let's talk about that.
Horizon Zero Dawn would make sense.
Let's talk about that one a little bit more, because it's more of a big budget. It's an
exclusive.
It's an expensive game.
It was very, very hyped as an exclusive. It's an expensive game, and it's very much... It came out at a time that it was the exclusive for PlayStation.
Some of the people that were commenting, both on Twitter and other comments like YouTube and stuff like that, we're estimating that it's definitely over 6, or I saw someone say for sure over 7 million.
Was one of,
now, I agree with these people. I think it is. I think it has to be.
It could be. I hope so.
At the 1 year mark, in my opinion, it should be in the 8 to 10 million range.
That would make sense.
I wouldn't have been surprised with as much press as Horizon Zero Dawn got. And it's a beautiful game. Even on PC, like people always talk about how incredible PC is because you can have like 4 graphics cards and ridiculously...
Change them out whenever you want.
Ridiculously powerful CPU and an amazing motherboard. You can have all these things. I've never even seen a game on PC that matches Horizon Zero Dawn graphics-wise.
No.
It is the most beautiful game probably out there. Yeah. And at the very least, you could say it's on the level of Gears of War running on the X or Rise running on a strong PC that can do up-res resolution. So it's up there. As much press as it's gotten, I am surprised that at the year mark coming up here pretty soon, that if it wouldn't be 10 million. It should be, in my opinion, 10 million, which, what is the percent ratio for that? What is it, 12, 13%?
That's like 12 or 13%.
Yeah. So think about that for a second. It's not great.
That's still a low number.
Not a game that big. A game that's a blockbuster AAA. It's huge. It's huge. It's
sought after, hyped up.
Highly influential. You know, we've heard reports that, whether these are true or not, that it's influenced Microsoft to do a game kind of similar. Yeah. Supposedly the new Fable is going to be kind of similar in some way to that. So you should see some big sales numbers there.
You should see, if you look at the attach, because the attach rate was the number we bumped into that we were just shocked at.
Yeah.
2 per console for the entire generation. And then you look at, if it sold 10 million. So 10 million, we'd be talking tripled from the number we've most recently heard. 3.5 million was when?
Well, 3.4 was earlier in the year. I want to say it was April or something.
I think it was April 2017. Yeah. So you would be talking about tripling from then. Yes. Which seems a little unlikely in the sense that most sales are right up front. It will continue to sell well for another year or another 2 years. It's still being hyped. Definitely. But you'll still have a bigger plunge of sales right when something comes out. So you'd be talking about tripling it. And you're talking about tripling the most recent number we've heard. And again, I hope that Horizon Zero Dawn has tripled that. I do.
Yeah.
But that still leaves us, if we round it up and not down, at 13% attached.
Still,
That's less than a quarter of the consoles that can play it. That's way less than a quarter of the consoles that can play it playing it.
Well, I mean, it's even more shocking if you were to try to do math on Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto and stuff like that. And I know I get the argument that people would come back with, well, those are multiplats. But because they're multiplats, they, in theory, should have a lower percentage across the different platforms. PC.
If you take each.
Yeah.
If you
PC,
divide it into
Xbox,
thirds.
And PlayStation, you would think that those would be, at the very least, somewhere around that percentage of 10 to 13%. But they're much higher.
Much higher. And they're multiplats. And here's what our point is on multiplats, because we had a couple of people comment on that. A multiplat is different because there's how many of them that come out in a year. Everybody's going to choose a couple of multiplats, or if you're really into gaming, several multiplats. You're not going to buy them all. You would be a lot more likely to see a much larger chunk of people buy the exclusive because it gets more hype, it gets more advertising, it gets more attention. They make a better game a lot of the time with them because it's an exclusive. So you would expect those to be the biggest thing for that platform.
I definitely agree with you when you say they make a better game a lot of the time. That's the reason I buy all three of the consoles.
All of the exclusives for all of the consoles.
Well, I buy the console to play the exclusive. I'm definitely not buying it for Call of Duty, stuff like that.
Exactly.
So yeah, you're right about that. Those games should be doing better. Why aren't people, we've said this before, why aren't people supporting these games on both of those two platforms?
Yeah, it's all of it. It's not one company or another. It's alarming to think that we're working so hard to promote that and to make that okay and to kind of rationalize it with older data or, well, this console's doing this and that one's doing that and that one's doing that. But look at the revenue and look at what the company would want to see.
Yeah.
And there's no way that it can be anywhere near that.
Yeah.
Multiplats, we've got multiplats with 100 million sold.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
And so...
Or 60, 70, 80 million.
Yeah,
at the very
so you
least.
divide that up. Let's divide it up and say it's 20 million per platform. So that's one of the games that you pick and choose which ones you buy, and you have 20 million on each platform. Yeah. And we've even heard Phil Spencer say recently that the exclusives on the Microsoft side, they're not selling like you would think they are.
Yeah, yeah.
So we know that the attach is lower on those, and that's... As an entire industry, we should be pushing against that. We should be putting our money where our mouth is.
We'll get to that a little bit later, but weren't there a couple other things that lead into that as well?
Yeah, so a couple of kind of little things. So there's a rumor out there, and we actually don't know where the rumor came from, that Sony Pictures may be either dying off or getting taken over.
Yeah, I saw that.
A lot of change at Sony. We've had a couple of videos just this year of changes to staff.
Yeah, there's been 12 or 13 departures within the last 6 years.
So there's been a lot of shakeup and a lot of change, presumably to drive Sony where
And there was an article about this, which is rare.
There's an article about this, and it was an article essentially of the person who runs Sony Pictures answering the rumor. And he did deny the rumor. He said, no, Sony Pictures isn't dying off or being taken over. But he said that he's really been emphasizing their need to scale that operation, saying that Sony Pictures is very small against giants and positioned for a takeover, for the possibility of a takeover. The other interesting thing is that one of the executives, the third-party relations head at Sony, just left.
Yeah, so that's another weird thing, and it wasn't announced, right? It was like...
It has not been announced.
Yeah.
So GamesBeat talked to someone who's close to the matter, and then the person himself, which is Florian Hunziker, did a written statement to GamesBeat saying, yes, I have departed. Didn't necessarily say why, and Sony has not announced it.
That's interesting. It's also a little weird that Sony wouldn't get out ahead of that and kind of do... a press statement of some sort, because it's going to get found out. It has. Obviously, they wrote this article about it. We'll try to link that in the description as well. Yeah, so I mean, it falls right in line. How does this relate to gaming? We're talking about the movie side of things.
Yeah.
We're talking about this other person that left. It's because it falls in line with what Kaz Hirai basically started out to do, which was cut the fat and eliminate some of those positions and save some money where you can and focus more on gaming.
Yeah.
So it's right along with things that we've said before, predictions we've made. We predicted that more people would leave. Here it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, Sony's putting a focus on the places that they're getting their money from, hopefully,
which is smart.
Right?
Yeah.
So Sony Pictures hasn't been doing overly well. Definitely not in comparison to gaming.
It's been suffering the last few years, yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of the same thing that he did when he took over, which is to get rid of all these tiny little departments that are doing okay, but they're having to staff them very heavily for very little revenue.
Yeah.
And hopefully that means they're continuing to put more emphasis into the gaming division, because that's what makes Sony money, is the PlayStation division. But it is interesting. So this is Adam Boy's replacement, and this person was there for about a year. And Sony, third-party relations is something Sony's very good at.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting that they've had 2 of the execs that were in that position move on fairly quickly.
That quickly, yeah.
Considering that's actually one of the departments that does very well for them.
It is, yeah. That's strange, yeah.
So last video, we went through some numbers, and I reiterated earlier in our current video what the numbers were and what we discussed and everything. But we had a lot of feedback.
Yeah, we had mostly on Twitter, from what I understand, and some of the more credible things that I saw from some more credible people basically just admitted that we are right. That our
numerically speaking, correct.
Right? Yeah, because we're not coming up with the numbers. These are literally numbers that Sony.
These are numbers from Sony,
put out. So you can't really be wrong about talking about that, because it's their information. They put it out in the way they wanted to put it out. But that's an interesting tactic. If you're going to have a rebuttal, or if you're going to have a problem with something somebody said, it's, I don't know, you tell me if I'm wrong, but not the best tactic to admit that they're correct.
Yeah.
Especially not right out of the gate.
telling you you're right. But then I'm going to tell you why you're right again.
That's what it was, essentially. From the ones that seemed credible, that didn't seem like troll accounts. They were basically just admitting that it's correct. So that's interesting. A good way to start that, I guess.
We have to be correct about that, because those are verified numbers.
Yeah, that's what they put. And then other people try to say we were wrong about other numbers. We literally spelled it out. We literally said it's speculation about the other numbers, because we don't have hard numbers. You can go back and watch it. We did say that.
And all of our rounding was friendly rounding.
Yes.
We rounded into the favor of the discussion.
We've rounded into the favor of the companies to try to make the companies look as good as we can possibly do. It's actually a little worse than what you even want to think or know about that. So basically, the argument is essentially, from the best I can gather, and someone even did a video, his name is Porter Rock 77, he did a video going into this and bringing up formulas and bringing up other consoles into it. You did specifically say current. We're going off of
current.
Everything we've ever done has been off of this current generation, talking about the numbers that we have. We've never really gone in depth with other previous generations. That's not. It doesn't really make sense, because we're 4 years in to this generation. So you'd also have to take the 4-year mark from anything that you decide to compare to it.
Yeah, you have to cut the numbers around to make them fit that.
Even taking the 4-year mark, though, is not an apples-to-apples comparison. And the reason why is we're talking about generations where the industry was only at $50 billion, and in some cases, with some of those consoles, less. The industry today is $116 billion. It's much bigger. It's much more accepted. The industry has
at least doubled in size.
Oh, yeah. More than that from the PS2 era. Yeah. It's a lot more acceptable to be a gamer. It's a lot more acceptable.
A lot more accepted now.
People, people in their 50s, 60s, 70s are buying games and playing these games. Yeah. It's kind of shifted a lot. It used to be something that people looked at for kids. Yeah. Now, most kids don't even care about games. They're on their tablets and phones and stuff like that.
True.
So it's actually shifted quite a bit. So it's way more acceptable. Yeah, I do think these ratios that we're coming up with that match something from the PS2, or for some reason there was a real strong focus on the Xbox 360. Where you're getting the correlation there, I don't understand. Yeah. The only thing I figure is that people are emotionally affected. They have some insecurities about the 360, and maybe that's because the 360 was supposedly the winner of the previous generation. Different people say different things about that, but I guess that's where the insecurities come in. I don't have any connections to 360. It isn't even one of my top 3 favorite consoles. You don't. So that's a weird thing to bring up and say that it somehow affects us. It doesn't.
That's what we would want to compare this to.
Yeah, we're in the most clinical sense, we're only talking about the numbers that companies give us. That's it.
And only now. Because I don't feel like we have anybody in our audience that would be hyped up about listening to a PS2 and 360 video.
I don't think so, no.
That's the thing, is if you can go back in time and you can say, well, it's okay because there was, one game per console back this many years ago. But again, we're giving permission for
that's
it to be
even
low.
Worse. That's as somebody said, I think it was Porter Rock, he said that, if you look at the ratio for the PS2, it comes down to 1 game per console sold per year for 10 years.
In the PS2 era.
Yeah, and that is bad. There's no wonder that we've lost all of these game studios over this last 15 years. It's right there. The writing is on the wall. The proof is in the pudding in this situation.
Yeah.
If you're only doing that attach, let's go back to the current generation, 2 games per year. You're only buying 2 games. Most people are only buying 2 games
per year.
Per year.
Not even per year, per gen.
Per console sold.
Yeah.
It's actually, the numbers are even worse because there's more than the users. The user number is greater than the console sold because multiple people are using most consoles these days. Mm-hmm. I know in my household, several people are using it and buying games for it.
Yeah.
So it's actually not even 2. If you look at the per user thing, it's even worse. It's lower than that.
Right, because you've got multiple people accessing it.
Which ties back to some of the things we talked about into this video. Maybe people aren't happy with the games they're getting. We don't know what it is. It could be that a lot of these games have been delayed for years and years and years at a time. That could be factoring in. Whatever is the cause. We've seen studios get closed down. We've even lost a publisher or 2 from the market over the last 15 years.
Yeah.
This is not a good situation. So if you want to hang your hat on saying 2 games per year being sold for a generation is somehow a good thing, you tell me if I'm crazy, that does not sound like a good argument that you want to put your name next to.
No.
That's your argument that that's good?
It's
no,
good
that's
because
not good.
It's similar to something else that we've seen in the past. But you can't tell me that Sony or Microsoft, if we had these numbers for Microsoft, we would do the same comparison. It still could be something like that we would find, and we would still say that that's really, really bad. Yeah. Same thing with Nintendo. They just happen to be in their prime because they've got a new console out. And I guarantee you, Sony is not, that's why they give the numbers in chunks like that. They would not be proud of that attach rate. Microsoft would not be proud of that attach rate. They don't put all this R&D and work and effort into putting out these consoles that they don't make money off of.
To sell 2 games per year.
To sell 2 games per year. To sell, having a 75 million install base and selling 3.5 million of your exclusive game.
Absolutely.
Is not acceptable. We shouldn't be proud of that. We should not be proud of that's how many games we're buying.
Yeah. We saw uproar over, like you mentioned Hellblade. Earlier before, like you should be, if you're emotionally tied to that game, if you have an investment in it and you think it should have done better and you told people about it and you shared screenshots with your 10,000 followers or whatever you have, you should be upset that it didn't sell better. Was it 500,000 on PlayStation?
500,000
for total. 74 million.
Well,
what is the attach rate on that?
Well, it's actually, so it's 500,000 copies sold period as far as I've seen.
I forgot that. Yeah, you have PC.
Yeah, because
so PC you're actually dividing that even worse. It's an even lower attach percentage.
It's much less than 0.5%. It's way less than 1% attach. Yeah. You can't tell me they put all this effort into putting out all these consoles that we know they don't make money on consoles. Every company tells us that.
Yeah.
Why would they put 73.6 million efforts out there, and however many Xboxes there are out there, to make, $120 off of each of them for a generation? Of course, much of that $120 for the 2 games going to publishers and devs and all over the place. That can't be good. Yeah,
that's not going to be good for the industry. You're going to see more studios close down. We're going to lose more developers in the long run if that remains at 2, if it doesn't climb. Here's the other bad thing to think about that number for a second, because people kept saying in the comment section, how's that bad? We'll spell this out for you. Maybe you'll understand this a little bit better.
Yeah.
So it's bad because around the 4 and 5 year marks is actually where the attach rate is at its highest. It actually usually gets a little bit lower in the back end as people lose interest in the generation.
They get less excited about their console.
A lot of things happen. They get less excited about that stuff. It's the same games regurgitated throughout the generation because they're using old engines to make these games. So it makes sense. You have people getting excited for the next generation, so they're waiting there. They're hedging their bets. They're not spending as much money. Then you also have people jumping ship and going to PC. We talked about PC numbers being 350, almost 400 million, probably even higher than that.
Consider themselves
it's
PC
2018 now, January 2018. Could be even higher than that by now. You have a lot of people jumping ship after the 4 and 5 year marks for consoles, and those people no longer are buying games for the console, so that's hurting the attach rate as well. Lots of things can factor into this. So it could potentially get even worse. Again, not great for the industries. We've had Nintendo and Microsoft, and I believe Sony did this as well, come out and say that they need to hit a certain number per console sold.
Absolutely.
So they need to have a certain amount of software sold with the console in order for the generation to be considered a break even.
just to break even.
Yes.
We're not anywhere near break even if this is the type of number we're talking about. They put so much R&D and money into these consoles.
Yeah.
They barely make anything if they do make anything on the console.
Yes.
Yes, they need to sell several games per console because that's where the entire profit of the entire gaming industry
Well, you wouldn't, to be specific, you wouldn't be break even at just the numbers that we kind of know. You're break even and above that with the digital sales. So selling season passes, selling DLC, microtransactions. Yeah. Those are the things that actually help all these companies out, as we've stated before in other videos. Yeah. Those are the things that I think these people that are trying to say that our math is bad, even though they admit that we're right.
That the numbers are right, yeah.
You don't have an argument there. Again, if you want to hang your hat on this idea that 2 games a year is okay, well, that kind of makes sense, actually, because, I mean, they obviously aren't buying games. You guys aren't buying games. You're not supporting the studios. You're not supporting the games you're getting.
Yeah.
If you are only buying 2 games a year.
If you're buying 2 games in a generation.
Yeah. If you're going to really do a video or a post or criticize us on Twitter or wherever saying that that's a good number, 2 games per year is good, that's laughable.
You're not thinking about the future of this company that you love and support.
Yeah, you obviously, if you're saying that's okay, you obviously don't care that much about some of these developers.
Yeah. And that's, there's been this huge bandwagon war on microtransactions. Why doesn't anybody ever ask, why is there suddenly a huge push for those? Look at the game sales.
They need to make their money somewhere.
They're gonna sell half the games that they should.
They're only selling 2 games a year. Yeah.
So they're selling 2 games. So then they got to make their money somewhere.
Yeah, they got to make it back somewhere.
That's why microtransactions are
digital goods. It doesn't cost nearly as much as physical goods, hardware, and physical games. They're losing money on certain things, hardware and physical game wise, if they don't hit certain numbers, if they don't break even. They're always talking about that. We heard that with Hellblade as well.
Yeah.
So they need to sell more digital goods in order to recoup
expenses. They're just trying to stay open.
In order to become no one's just trying to stay open though. They're not existing. They're not doing all this work to break even.
No.
They want to make money. They want to make so much money on the game sold that they can fund the sequel to that and one additional project. That's the goal of every single release that comes out. And
you can't tell me they're anywhere near that with the numbers that we have.
They can't be. Again, what are we down to for studios? Sony has 14, 15 studios for them. They used to have more. They might even have less than that by now.
A lot of studio closings.
Microsoft is down to 5 or 6 studios. That's bad. That's not good.
Really bad.
That means people aren't buying the games. You can't be telling me that that's a great thing.
No.
You don't want to pull out a tiny little whiteboard and say, "Oh, this is good because the PS2 did far worse, or the 360 did worse."
Exactly.
That's laughable.
Yeah.
That's a joke.
So it's never been ultra successful, so let's keep not being successful.
Yeah, attach rates have never been great, and they need to be better, which means gamers need to buy these games. And I've said it before on this very show. You need to buy it when it's at $60. There's this new push. It was started by, ironically enough, it was actually, we're always making fun of PC and PC guys. It was actually started by Steam. They started doing this thing where they would do these quarterly sales, essentially.
Yeah.
Really huge sales. We're talking big percentages off. And so what it does is it trains the gamer to wait for the sale. And I've been seeing this on Twitter. I even got into a couple of arguments with people on Twitter where they were saying, no, just wait. Just wait till the end of the year. You're going to get everything 70% off, 30%, 50%, whatever it is. That doesn't help the developer.
We don't care about actually helping our purchase, actually keeping the studio open and keeping another game on its way.
Yeah,
we don't even care.
There's a major push to start doing stuff like that. That's just as bad as buying a used game at GameStop.
So now they're making half as much on half their games?
Yeah.
Now they got to sell twice as much because they're making half as much on half their games.
I got a game the other day for like $4.99 that was an expensive title on one of the sales.
The dev got like $1 off that.
They got very little off of that, yeah. I bought Hellblade recently because every podcast in the world told me that I had to.
Selling that like crazy.
I had to buy a PS4 to get this game. I already had a PS4, so it wasn't that much of a push.
Yeah.
But I got it for, I think it was like $20 or something on sale the other day. And, I like the game. I think I'm going to like it more as I delve more into it.
Yeah.
But the more I like that, the more I feel bad about having bought it on sale.
Yeah.
You should be buying these games when they're new. You shouldn't be happy about a 2 games ratio or rate per year.
If all you have to do to do your part and help a developer and help your platform that you love is pay $60,
definitely.
They put millions and millions up to give you this.
Definitely.
So if you just have to give them $60, let's give them the $60.
Absolutely.
So we need to put our money where our mouth is, because we have a lot of mouths running around. We've got Twitter. Everybody's on Twitter.
These same
talking
people
all day. They're on podcasts talking all day
yes.
about games. They're arguing about, like, a video like ours where we go through some numbers. They're arguing about that for countless hours.
Yes.
But are they buying games?
There's more hours spent talking about these games than actually playing
them. And
for some of these people that are on 4 and 5 podcasts. It's crazy.
Yeah, so there's literally no way that you're playing as much as you are talking about it. And talking about it, we talked about Horizon Zero Dawn and Hellblade and all the hype. Talking about it clearly doesn't do it.
Yeah.
So why do people not buy the games? Why are we more wrapped up in the console war and in fighting and in podcasting and getting excited and hyping games than we really are buying them?
And if you do have as big a following as someone like Porter Rock 77, he's got a much bigger following than us. We're a tiny little channel.
Yeah, definitely.
I would ask him, why aren't you telling your people to support these games? Why aren't you saying, why didn't you buy Hellblade? Why didn't you buy Horizon Zero Dawn? Because clearly, those percentages we came up with for even a big, giant, tentpole blockbuster game like Horizon, that's not good enough. It should be at 10 million. As beautiful and as amazing as that game is, and everybody says it is, it should be at 10 million right now.
The people who made it deserve that type of sales number.
Absolutely, they do.
So we have one other topic that we wanted to do, which is the most anticipated games.
Yeah.
Because we're halfway into the first month of 2018. We haven't even said anything. So this is a huge year for games.
Definitely, yeah.
What are you most looking forward to?
Well, there's quite a few games that were like rumored to have been announced to release this year. So you kind of have to wade through some of that. I want to go with games that I do think are going to come out this year.
Okay.
And we've talked a lot about the Xbox side of that. A lot of our followers, all our subscribers are Xbox sided or centric. So I'll focus actually a little bit more on the Sony games for a couple reasons. One of them is, I think we're 4 or 5, or this is year number 5 for the PlayStation 4. So far, they've only really had big budget AAA blockbuster titles, Uncharted 4 and Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yes.
All right, that's 2 games over. Let's not say 5 because we're not through this year yet. Yeah. Over 4. That's a one hot game every 2-year average.
Yeah.
All right, you can't tell me that's not a problem. All right, and then so we have God of War, Days Gone, and then Detroit. Those are the big 3. I do think those will release here in 2018.
Yeah.
Detroit, I'm predicting, is going to release in June. Let's see how close I can come to that.
Detroit, June. Got it.
No, not Detroit. Sorry, God of War, I think is going to release in June. I don't know about Detroit.
Let's see if that is right.
Well, here's the funny thing about God of War. So we heard in February 2017 that the people internally at that studio were already playing the game in its entirety. So the
February 2017?
February 2017. So the game was essentially, story-wise, it was finished. At least story-wise. They still go in and they tweak things and they fix things and they change things. Supposedly the game is one continuous cut from start to finish where the camera never cuts away. So that'll be interesting to see. That's another reason why I'm excited to see how they pull that off.
That will be fascinating.
That's the tough thing to pull off, and that'll be quite an impressive feat.
Yeah.
So very anticipated about that. We did hear that the pre-orders are soft. That boils right back into our previous conversation.
The orders are soft, so of course the pre-orders are soft.
Yeah, I know there's a big anti-pre-order thing that's gone around for a while, but I used to look at some interesting data from one of the industries that's closely related to video games, and some of that video game stuff came through that way as well. Pre-orders are very important because they do tell these companies what to expect. They also tell the companies if they need to up their merchandise or their marketing, basically.
It helps them land their launch.
So if you're interested in God of War, please
pre-order it.
Pre-order the game.
Yeah.
It'll help them figure out what they need to do marketing-wise.
Yes.
And it'll help them understand how many copies they need to send and that kind of thing.
Hopefully it'll help them get a better number.
Yeah. So that's one of them. Detroit was the other one that I mentioned.
Can't wait for Detroit.
I think we're both... I'll let you talk more about that because I think that's one of yours. And then Days Gone. Days Gone's got to launch in October.
Can't wait for that one. Yeah.
It's got the zombie tinged side to it, so that'll be cool. The trailers that I've seen look good enough to get me interested. I'm always into zombie type stuff. I like The Walking Dead, all that stuff. So yeah, those are my games.
So I will be excited to see what happens because we talked about Sony's most recent press conference, and we talked about that they seem to have a lot of games that are lined up and ready. and just don't want to put dates on them yet. They seem to want to really put their timing carefully on where they're putting out these games to make sure that they, again, we can see the effort going into trying to make sure they do as well as possible.
It seems like they're afraid to announce even launch.
They're slightly afraid of announcing a launch date, because if you happen to just have a bad launch date and Nintendo does something on your launch date, it can really hurt your first push of sales, and the first push of sales is the biggest.
Well, thank goodness that for both Sony and Microsoft this year, Nintendo doesn't have any Zelda
Nintendo
or Mario
will back
games.
off a little bit, which will help.
Yeah.
But, you know, all the games are lined up. They're ready to go. They had conversations with their developers. They are ready to go, and we don't have dates for them because they need to land well so that we get the best possible sale.
Yeah, PSX, they asked everybody that same question.
Everybody. When is it coming? And they were all like, well, it's basically ready.
Yeah.
But we didn't see any dates.
It became almost this like laughable thing where the developer, the head of the studio, was like kind of laughing about it. Like, they know something we don't. Why aren't they announcing these dates for these games? Let's see something.
So in terms of most anticipated games, that it's not a game, but I'm looking forward to seeing what the sales do. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing a pickup in the sales.
Yeah.
And to see how some of these games sell.
Definitely.
Everybody that watches our channel regularly knows I'm really excited for Detroit.
Yeah.
And they just did, at their most recent press conference, they did a way better gameplay trailer than they've done. So I can't wait for that one.
Well, just to cut you off for a second. So, like I mentioned, a lot of our viewers are more Xbox-type viewers.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see a lot of the criticism coming from the Xbox side of it, at least on Twitter, for Detroit. And it's like, well, how do we get behind games like the Telltale games? How do you get behind Mass Effect?
Right.
And all the other games that do this, you make a decision and it affects the outcome of the game and the storyline. Yeah. How do you do that and then not get excited for Detroit, which is a much more advanced version of those same things?
I've had a lot of people ask me when I tweet about being excited about Detroit. They'll ask me, you know, and you can tell it's a intentional way that they ask the question. Is it a walking simulator or is it a game?
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's a lot of walking simulators that have got some really good sales on Xbox.
Yeah, on everything.
You know, so it seems like the Xbox side is like, nope, we don't like the idea of Detroit because it's a PlayStation game.
Yeah.
Well, PlayStation did what they should have. They got a really good exclusive.
Well, it's not just the Xbox people. I'm not seeing a lot of hype for it from PlayStation and people as well.
It's not nearly what I'm hyped right now is like the hype for 15 people that I'm not seeing hyped. So I look forward to seeing that. I think that's going to be one of a kind for a while until somebody tries to copy it. I can't wait for both Days Gone and State of Decay because I love zombie survival. Your decisions impact your characters. All the things that those two games are.
Definitely.
So I'm really looking forward to those two. And then Anthem is one of my more anticipated because I love the games that are similar to and made by the same people.
So out of all of our games, we have mostly exclusives.
Exclusives. They're the most exciting.
I think real gamers are really excited about exclusives and they support those games.
Yeah.
Now,
there's
2018,
more hype for that.
2018 is going to have a ridiculous amount of exclusives.
Yeah.
So
Sea of Thieves. That's the other one I forgot about. Sea of Thieves is coming too.
That'll be cool too.
That one I'm really excited for. So it will be interesting because we have a lot of exclusives landing this year. So let's see what the sales look like and let's see what the attaches look like and hopefully people get behind this and they support this and they buy their games.
Let's get that number above 2.
Let's get a better attach rate that's more conducive to the future.
Yeah, I know we're not going to see 4 or 5, nothing like that, because that would be, that'd be a huge,
that'd just be too much of a change. Yeah.
Well, it's probably not even possible, but it's, at least let's get it closer to 3.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the way that spreads out over the course of a generation,
that's a lot more profit.
Yeah, it's a lot more profit for the developers.
For the developers that we really want to come out with these games. So a couple shout outs that we have.
Yeah.
Shout out to Luca and Azrael. It's a girl day apparently.
Yeah. It's cool to see a couple of female supporters, I guess, because Luca has retweeted a lot of your stuff.
Luca's awesome. She retweets my stuff. She's said some really nice and supportive things. So shout out to her.
Yeah.
Both of them have YouTube channels and both of them do some streaming.
Yeah, and Azrael's awesome. We interact with her a lot on Twitter. Tons of great conversations back and forth. Very funny. Yeah, and they both do streaming as well. So, check out their Twitters if they're going to do Mixer or any other type of streaming. Yeah. And they both have YouTubes, too. So
they both have YouTubes.
I don't know if you said that.
Yeah. So both have YouTubes and both do streaming. Yeah. Both of them have some really interesting perspectives on some really big things. So
definitely, yeah.
Definitely check out some of their stuff and see what they think. And speaking of YouTube.
Great people in the community.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, so I'm sure some people have heard of it, some people don't know. I'm not going to go into all the details, but YouTube is changing the way they do their metrics and their analytics and the way channels will be promoted and stuff like that in the future. Yeah. Lots of big changes there. So if you like our channel, by the way, thanks for all the new subscribers. Yeah, just from that last video, we got a ridiculous, huge influx of new subscribers. So thanks to you guys. If you like what we've done here, you want to see this type of analytical discussion about everything in the games industry, definitely give us a sub if you haven't subscribed yet, and let other people know about it as well, and hopefully they'll subscribe as well. We don't usually ask for help from people in the community, but with hearing some of those things that are coming, I think February 20th is when the changes go into effect. We, if you do want to see more of us, we would need you to help.
Yeah, it's like you're gonna make a cut or you're not, and if you're not, YouTube is gonna kind of make it where it's not worthwhile for you to put all the time into it. So definitely, we're not too far, but we could definitely use some extra support to get that extra mile. Because we love doing this, we love the analysis. If you watch all of our videos, if you go back through the stuff that we've done, we have a lot of good things to say and a lot of bad things to say about everybody in the industry. And our goal is really to look at the numbers, to analyze what we have, to analyze what we know.
Well, that's the funny thing that you say that, because I could be crazy. I need to go back and watch all our videos, but I feel like we've actually defended Sony and their business decisions
a lot,
far more than we have Microsoft, and I feel like we've been actually pretty critical.
We've been pretty hard on Microsoft, actually.
They're the last few years, this whole PC push that they got, the play anywhere, the crossplay, all these things that every gamer, we have a pretty good circle of gamers. It's somewhere between 10 and 12 people right in there. Yeah. None of them care about any of that stuff. Microsoft has been pushing initiatives that no one gives a damn about, and Sony's been pushing initiatives that are very good for their business, making smart business decisions. And we've talked about those things
a lot.
You can go back and watch our videos if you don't believe us. A lot of the Sony people that have been commenting think that we're just
total Xbox fanboy and girls. We're definitely not.
So. Yeah, I mean, you watch all the videos and you tell us what you think about that.
Absolutely. So we've had a lot of critical things to say on both sides, but I do agree. I think we've actually been a lot more critical of Microsoft. The only one that doesn't get a lot of criticism from us is Nintendo.
Because they just don't do very much
about them. So.
Well, and they just launched the Switch. Let's see where they are.
They're in a great spot right now. Yeah. But we look at things as they actually are.
My prediction is 4 years in, the Switch that is current will be no more. I think they'll just continue it and they'll come out with a version 2 that's better.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where they go. And we always look at whatever it is that we have, and we always analyze what we know, and it doesn't necessarily matter where it lands.
We also, I feel like we've done a good job of specifying speculation, theory,
and where we get our speculation. We always explain where it comes from.
Yeah.
So.
Definitely, yeah.
It's interesting. That's it, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. Thanks for watching.